Thank you all for coming. We have Zoom.
I think,
Got
board
Rebecca.
directors,
We got Connie, got you and I.
board directors on Zoom, Alan Cohen. Alan, are you with us?
I'm here.
And
Hello, Alan.
Dan Mitchkey. Wasn't sure about Dan, and Courtney Arbor. Courtney's
Morning.
waving at us from Austin. Happy first day of school.
Thank you.
I don't think there was anyone else. Is there another director? Board director?
Anybody we missed?
No, that's all. Dan is with us.
Oh, thank
Hey,
you.
Dan. All right, we will get going. We got a full agenda and we got some time slots on each category there, so we'll try to do our best to stay on schedule. There is no public comment, so that makes that easy. I do have a needed declaration of conflict of interest. We can get that. Please raise your hand if there's a conflict of interest. Melinda? There you go.
Justin is all things Dallas College. Rebecca is all things Child Care Group. All things DIC from Susie. Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Courtney, all things TWC.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Courtney.
Gordon.
Okay. I think we're opening with,
And then we're gonna go, and to keep it simple, I have no comments. I want to thank you guys for coming to the meeting, and I know everybody's schedule is busy. We're wrapping up summer, getting into the fall, so thank you for making time for this board meeting. We will have one in September, and then we'll have our final board meeting of the year in October for our awards and presentation there. So please put those on your calendar, and Lori and staff sent out in the last email or one of the emails most recent, our calendar for 2023. Please put those dates down now as soon as you can so that there is no conflict on your side when other things may arise as we get in later this year or early into 2023. With that being said, we'll jump right into a report from the Finance Committee. Ashley Carter, if y'all practice. Go ahead. That's the practice of.
Good morning, I'm Ashley Berner, Chief Financial Officer for the board, and we have wrapped up our fiscal year 2021 audit with our external auditors, Crow LLP. So today we have Kevin Smith here. He's the partner on our engagement to talk you through the reports that Lori sent out to you prior to the board meeting.
Thank you, Ashley. For an introverted auditor, you guys are a lot more intimidating in person than you were on Teams calls. So bear with me. Three-dimensional is throwing me. I think first and foremost, I want to say very clean audit, which is something we have grown accustomed to in serving you guys. But it's important to note that on an annual basis, you kind of have to put away historical experience, do our risk assessments, and really be proven each year as to both the internal controls, compliance, as well as the soundness of the financial statements. It was a very clean audit. Probably just as importantly, we have met with your audit and finance committee both before our engagement as well as subsequent to our engagement to discuss our overall plan and consequently how our plan was executed and whether any findings were developed through that process. I will say that they have completed their fiduciary role with the utmost professionalism. They asked hard questions. I think they're satisfied with our answers. They have done their due diligence and fulfilled their role. And with that, my prepared comments today are rather short and brief because we've gone through the much more intensive role with that audit committee. We are engaged really to provide three reports or three opinions. First and foremost on the financial statements, and we have issued an unmodified opinion. Really, that means two things. that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that our audit allows for us to form an opinion that the books and records of WFS support those financial statements. We have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance we can provide. Just as important, I would want to note, is that we had 0 audit differences. So we could still have an unmodified opinion, but we could have identified something within the financial statements that was material enough that needed to be changed, or was immaterial and we could live with it, and management could live with it. Through the audit process, we did not identify any such audit difference. So the books and records that Ashley and her team prepared and the financial statements that were provided to us on day 1 of the audit are the financial statements that are provided to you at the end of the audit. So that, coupled with the unmodified opinion, I think should really provide you a high level of assurance that the financial information that you're receiving on a monthly, quarterly basis is quality and sound because it's scrutinized at your end without adjustment. The remaining 2 reports are compliance in nature, one at the federal level, one at the state level. They're very similar in nature. The requirements are very consistent. One could even say that the federal government has issued their audit regulations. The state has gone in and done a change all and changed U.S. government to the state of Texas, and then we test that accordingly. But it's really based upon where the funding begins, and that's who gets the federal audit, who gets the state audit. These are very in-depth. They limit auditor judgment as to what is material, what is reported, etc. Basically, if we find anything through the procedures that they prescribe, we're required to report those to you. Again, from a federal and a state level, we've issued an unmodified report with 0 findings, both from an internal control standpoint as well as a compliance standpoint. All of that being said, both the financial statement and the 2 grant compliance audits, this audit was as clean as they come. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions as it relates to the conduct of the engagement.
Kevin, I think the committee always asks this question. I think it's fair to ask it by the full board. Is there anything else? Is there anything that this board should be looking at that we have not looked at?
I will answer the same way that I answer with you guys. There are no additional things that we have not reported to you. One of the things that I always share with the audit committee, though, is the unique nature, and you guys are very aware of the unique nature of this organization. The federal and state grant compliance is absolutely critical. When I audit cities and counties, the audit of the financial statements is job 1. And then, oh, by the way, we do this single audit or compliance over here. Here it is the exact inverse. The grant compliance work is so critical, and then the financial statements almost fall out. And the reason, even though, and I'm making up a number here, but $150 million of expenditures flow through on an annual basis. When you look at your fund balance, you're built to spend what you receive. So if you have, and I'm making up a number, but $100,000 of non-compliance or $40,000, what would seem really immaterial when you think about $150 million is absolutely very material and critical because of that unique nature of the organization. Organization understands that their risk assessment is very robust. Their internal control activities are very robust. So that's kind of the unique nature of our audit. With that said, so much of it is outsourced, etc. You guys have somewhere between 25 and 30 employees. Keeping highly qualified, trained employees who understand the organization, understand that grant compliance is absolutely critical. Those are the 2 things that I always share with the audit committee in after our financial statement audit or our debrief, because I think it's just kind of unique. And I know all of you as board members are aware of those items, but I feel it's my responsibility to say we see it too, and hope that it stays on the forefront of your minds.
Anything else? Miguel?
So this is a very basic question, so you have to forgive me for asking it. It may even be a question for the CFO. There's so many numbers within these documents. I'm trying to understand what is I guess two things. The first is, what is the actual total number budget for us annually? Like, what's that just total number? If I said, here's how much money we have as an organization, what is that general number?
It's right around 140,000, 150,000 for 2021.
Million.
Billion.
I was like,
Yeah.
golly.
We had a budget reduction so far.
Oh, that's the one thing I forgot to tell you.
But you know, it's changed so dramatically during COVID. Previously, we had it in our books, 120 million was like in our standard statement out there. And we've had to change that so many times because the money comes in, the money goes out. And we don't know, we just heard we're getting more childcare money October 1. So it's hard to put a finger on it. At one point though, if you rolled up and some money crosses over,
Yes.
money arrives on July 1, September 1, October 1, and January 1 in some cases. And then some have a 12-month, 14-month, 18-month spend, 2-year spend cycle. So that's the other problem in saying there is a specific dollar amount. So this year it was 140 mil, is that?
Yeah, 142.
142, 472.
Yeah, you got it.
Got it, okay. All right, so that's question number one. This is another very basic question. But of all those monies, a lot of which seem to be just us passing monies through, again, do we have discretionary monies within the broader?
Yeah, but you're right, a lot of it is passing through, Lori was mentioning what our budget was previously, and when I came 8 years ago, 90 million was the total budget, but now childcare is in excess of that 90 million. We do have discretionary funding for administrative, but of course they have to fit particular rules, has to be reasonable, necessary, and allowable. And then, of course, we run the workforce center. So we're paying our rent and things like that.
So then it's sort of a derivative or corollary of that question would be, do we have a specific number around what that discretionary? what those
Yes.
discretionary-
So typically, most of our grants allow for 10% administrative funding, some are a little different. This year, we're allowed probably, around $5 million. We won't spend that much, so we're very frugal. So typically, we spend around $3 million in admin and about the same in our central cost for our workforce location.
But the rest of the funds are spent on, and we like to move that admin to program services.
Yes, whatever we don't spend gets moved to the house.
And private money even comes with specifics. So foundation money now is not a given. Michelle knows that one. In the past, we had grants from JFF, Jobs for the Future, or Walmart. That money has to be spent on what they asked for, it has to go back. So you'll see it in here as non-federal money. It still came with specifics and a return of any funds not spent on the project, or we have to keep extending. And you'll see next month, Lynn Hoffman will report on the retail pays 5th year. Money is all spent. Walmart is very happy, lots of success and lots of information. But it took 3 extensions to spend it all out during COVID.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, just make sure I'm understanding? And so there is discretionary dollars. And I guess the real question for me is there an opportunity for the board to weigh in on how those discretionary dollars are spent? For example, there may be a grant opportunity that comes up that we may want to recommend funding for the discretionary allocation.
It's not happened except in 1 or 2 cases for projects. And you have, the board must approve if it's over my threshold, which is 250,000. It's over that, the board must approve it. One caveat, the money that we, and it's more than what we would normally have kept, but we keep money as a safeguard since we are a nonprofit organization. Because the last thing I want is, as Kevin mentioned, it could be a $40,000 mistake that we have to pay back. I've got to have the reserves to pay that back, or I have to go to the county and ask the judge for the money. Anybody want to go with me? Okay, you see my point. So there has always been a war chest that we've got earned income, we've got any kind of residual we've been able to pocket is sitting in that reserve. We can come back to you in September with an accounting of what's in there that's reserved, what's in there that was earned income, and what's in there that could be obligated to project. Is that fair?
I mean, thank
But
you.
that wouldn't prohibit, if we see something out there, Michelle, that we bring it up
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
board meeting and find out what we can.
But just to outline
Yeah,
what's at stake.
I think that's right. I mean, so, yeah, thanks for the question. Because there's someone that asked the board members, like,
Yes.
how much do we have in discretionary? We want to know. Not that we would position it, but we don't really know at the beginning of the year, like, how much we can play with, shall I say? I mean,
So one
strike that from the
I mean,
record.
that's what I mean it like that. I mean, that's fine.
I'd really like to make two kind of comments. One, just so everybody understands what Ashley was saying about the 10% ceiling on administration or administrative or overhead. I wouldn't call that discretionary funding. The federal grants recognize that I'm gonna make up numbers, but if we're gonna spend $100,000, that a portion of that is really overhead. We have to have CFOs, we have to have administrative professionals, et cetera. So $90,000 of that $100,000 grant has to go directly to the beneficiaries or the participants. 10,000 could be used to pay payroll of the people who are, for lack of better words, overhead supporting that. You guys don't typically hit the 10%. That is the maximum. It has to, what you do spend has to meet those qualifications that would be, I'm gonna make up the term, directly indirect to the grants. So that's one thing to really pay attention to. The other thing that I'd say is auditors tend to really focus on the basic financial statements or those required by GAAP. You guys include a schedule in the back that the total column will come up to the front pages as well. But I think to really understand your organization, spend some time there because it is by grant. And it will also kind of show what Laurie talked about, the fact that if you don't spend it, some of it can roll into the next, not always, et cetera. But it really kind of gives you a feel for how the monies were spent, perhaps more so than that one-page income statement that is the organization as a whole.
Thank you very much. Appreciate taking the time to come in and explain. If there's no more questions, Carter, I think we need a motion.
Well, first of all, Miguel, thanks for the question. Michelle, mostly your comments.
They're really grapefruit.
I will, I think that an engaged board is actually the definition of governance. So I really applaud you for digging into those financials and we'll continue to do that as a board. I think that overall, generally, we see money go in and go out to allotted programs. And I think there's several things we can do as a board. One, we need to challenge those recipients to make sure that they're being creative and that they're adjusting for the current workforce. And that we're not just caught in a way of doing things in the past. So I think that's one way. And then to look at creative other programs that would provide funding to special groups, for instance, youth, areas of poverty where there are no jobs. So I think there are things that we can do as a board and we're required to do, but this is really centered around governance. And so I would like to enter a motion that we accept the audit and thank Ashley and the team for their hard work, again, for a very clean audit. And so I would like to make that recommendation. Mr. Chair.
Second by Ken, motion by Carter, second by Ken. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Audit is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Now, you're welcome to stay for the rest.
I've never seen people cut that.
But we can't.
Just because I got through it, doesn't mean you're still not scared.
We scared them at the out. So we can't beat it.
Nice to get.
Drop that.
Yep, and yell. Hey, see what else.
All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Beginning on page 11, trust everybody has reviewed that for this vote. Do I have a motion to accept, or first of all, any questions?
One correction, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
In the June 15th minutes of the meeting, shows that I was present. Unfortunately, I was not present.
Honest man, thank you.
So no, we lost this. Yes.
All right, anything?
I have a comment on, when we get these consent items, I think it would be helpful if we saw a comparison. If it's applicable, what was allotted for the previous funding period. Right, see if it's up or down, more or less, and an explanation of why it would be up or down.
We appreciate that and we'll take note. It's very similar to prior. Am I right, Demetrius? The proportionate share of AEL is very similar to the prior year. So we'll show you that percentage is how it is.
Are there any other questions, comments? And can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as written? So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Gardner. Thank you, Ken.
The part of can.
Consent agenda passes. Next is our closed session. So I think everybody thinks staff is going upstairs.
Staff and guests are invited up to our suite on the 30th floor. If you would please, staff will lead you up there. The members will stay where they are. Madam Secretary will depart with me. I have asked the directors that are on Zoom to mute their phones and their cameras, mute their voices, and call in on a cell phone that I will leave here with Bill. When y'all are done, Bill, somebody text me and we will return. That's moving. So, yeah. Yes, sir. So Alan, Dan, and Courtney, if you please dial the number you've been given. I'm not gonna repeat the number, that would be a little ridiculous. Mr. Larry Hall has joined us. Larry is in charge of QNet, our security in terms of cyber. He is all about everything in our centers and our office, and he was joining us just in time for the closed session, so he's been in the hallway with me. We got caught up, didn't we? Which was pretty cool.
We got everybody back. I know we got other folks that are coming up from the 30th floor.
They're hitting us. We're good.
Hey, came through that door pretty quick.
Yes. I think. Lost me. Sorry, tell me to go, and it's not going.
Thank you, boss.
I think you can start. The secretary's here. I'm here. Board members. are here.
All right.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna take a little action. First, as it relates to our closed session. So,
Yes,
I'll ask Ellen.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation that we discussed in closed session.
Motion's been made, or recommendation motion, do I have a, motion made?
Count Ellen's as a motion.
Okay, Ellen motion,
And
Michelle
Michelle.
second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Then the recommendation passes. Let's see, we're a little bit behind, so we're gonna try to catch up real quick. President's report, Lori.
I have very little, so I kind of caught up in terms of our leases, and I think I briefed everyone on that. Hopefully, we can deliver two appropriate leases, one sooner than later, and the other one early 23.
And you did have that handout also.
I believe so. Also, if you would, please, mark your calendars for the 23 meetings. I don't want to send out a save the date because it makes it too hard to change out board members at that time. When we get an agenda, and I know y'all seen that trouble. I keep sending things to Justin that go to Joe May. So we'll try to figure that out. Yeah, I understand, sir. I'm working with your assistant. It's gonna get there. Beyond that, I don't think I have anything else to report. Due the 12th, you will get an invitation this week from Road Trip Nation. It will not be familiar, to please RSVP that you will be in attendance for September 12th to watch the Road Tripper. Talk to the audience, whoever's there, they're gonna talk, they're gonna be a moderated discussion, and we will see pieces of the PBS special. It's a big event. We will also see our friends from Tarrant County and North Central. The board directors will also be invited. So it's another power three, kind of a gathering. So thank you all very much. And we will have people from Austin, hopefully, in the room. With that, I'll leave it.
All right, let's go to some staff reports. We got some things there that we need to make some motions on. So Demetria, floor is yours.
Well, good morning. I'm Demetria Robinson, Executive Vice President, and I'll be presenting contracts and agreements on pages 15 through 17. The first two items of business are amendments to Edwards' existing FY 22 contract. The workforce system operations contract for adding funds in response to Edwards' request to cover direct services to TANF customers through September 30th in the amount of $150,000, $150,000 in reemployment services and eligibility and assessment funds, and $92,500 from our non-federal grant with Jobs for the Future as part of the Prologis Community Workforce Initiative Phase 2 funding. In addition, we're adding the incentive matrix based upon the board's contracted measures for this year. Targets are set by TWC, Texas Workforce Commission, and available funding. As noted, the choice's full work rate target has been added back to the measures as of June of this year. We are happy to report that Edwards is exceeding that measure currently. The matrix on page 15 outlines the 16 measures with the performance targets. These are the same targets that Richard presents to you each month and gives us an update.
Dimitri, could I ask just a couple questions on this? Again, I think it would be helpful for the board to see what the previous total contract was and then what the percentage is increasing.
Okay.
And then I just point out to the board that this is the fundamental function of the board is the Equus Work Centers. And I think, Lori, we talked about doing a trip to Redbird and actually seeing a workforce center. And I would encourage all our board members to be a part of that when we go on our own road trip, nation, if you will. And just to keep center of our mind that it's our responsibility to bring employers to employ potential employees and employees to potential employers. And that's the focus of really, we talk about childcare, and I don't want to diminish that, but nothing happens without jobs. So I really want to just focus on this area and really focus on what we're doing, what they're doing to enhance their capabilities to reach more employees. I know we have matrix, but I think this is an area of that this board should really focus on and make sure that we're getting the best possible solutions. I have a vision of what the workforce center might look like in 1959, and I want to make sure that it doesn't look like that anymore post-COVID.
Well, the cubes are short.
Same lighting, same floor.
No, no. You're-
Go ahead.
Okay, I will continue on.
May I make a point, just so everyone catches it? The value of that contract is 21,044,000, and the incentive, you would call it a profit. It is not a profit. It is an incentive of 700,000. That is the maximum they can earn for that very large contract. So I just want you to see that it's not an insurmountable sum. 700,000 out of the 21 million. That was all. Let me make that point.
I'll keep going. On the top of page 16, we're adding funds in the amount of 500,000 for the summer earn and learn program to Equus Youth System contract to provide workforce work readiness and paid work experience during the summer months for approximately 153 youth that are experiencing some type of disability. This is summer jobs for that category. We're also adding the incentive matrix for the youth contract for Equus in this action. The matrix consists of WILA performance, workforce innovation and opportunity act performance targets. The only change this year is a slight increase in the measurable skills gain target. Everything else remains the same.
Is it for next summer?
This is what's happened now.
Okay.
So we're wrapping up that program. So we're giving the funding for that reimbursement.
It was on a fee for service basis for SEAL, correct? Paid by the state to us.
Yes.
And therefore we then share that money with Equus. Some money is kept for it.
Yeah.
Dimitri, why don't you go ahead and go through for year 2023 proposed, and we'll vote on it all together.
Okay, so we are proposing initial contract budget to our current service providers based upon our program funding and planning estimates from TWC for FY 2021. These will be contracts effective October 1. The previous contract I talked about will end September 30. So we're going into the new fiscal year. We are within the procurement cycles for each of the service providers that are listed from page 16 and 17. With an increase of about 20% that we're seeing in our projection for childcare, we are proposing an increase in funding to childcare group's initial contract budget for operations and management of childcare services at $101 million. With that, 6% of that 101 million is for operations, and the remaining 94% is for direct payment to child care providers for children that are in care. So that is passed through to child care groups that are paying providers. With that increase, we also see a target change, which increases from our original target was 12,714, is going up to 14,707. And that's just preliminary.
Excuse me, that has to be met by what date? The 14,707, is that by?
That is projected to be met by September 30, 2020.
Thank you.
The next item is, I'm sorry, on page 17. We're also expecting an increase in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding that consists of WIA adult, dislocated worker, and youth funds. Combined, it is estimated to be an increase of approximately 14%. We are proposing an initial contract budget for Equus for the management and operations of our workforce centers and the programs in the amount of $15,344,691. Moving on to youth. We have contracts with Equus and Dallas College to serve disconnected youth with a primary focus on young adults ages 18 to 24. As I mentioned earlier, Equus also provides youth services to individuals with disabilities in partnership with the Vocational Rehabilitation Services Program. The initial contract budget is inclusive of the Summer Earn and Learn and the Student High Ability Navigator Program funding for a contract amount of $4,282,955. For Dallas College, we are proposing $1,017,428 for their initial budget effective October 1 as well. The college mainly focuses on preparing youth for training that's leading to recognize credentials and securing schooling. So they don't provide as much support services as Equus does. Equus has the opportunity to provide support services for transportation, needs-related payments, all those types of additional things that any country needs to see.
Do we have any
Questions?
questions on the recommendations of?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carl. Well, I'm gonna play the Miguel game, just play my nose.
I don't know if he threw you under the bus or not.
Same as name. Yeah, all right. I'm just a little confused here. So in the amendments for this fiscal year, these, where's is the funding coming from PwC, and is it, these are pass-through dollars that are going to our two vendors? Is that what we're talking about here?
So
It's $30 million of, I'm going to Equus, that is. $30 million, it looks like we're sending back. Is that just additional funding that's coming from PwC?
no, so you saying 30 million, you're combining the Equus Workforce Center and the youth contract together?
Yeah.
And the 2 years, Steve, so we've got to separate the 2 years. So on page 15, if you would, those, if Bill asked me the same thing, on temporary assistance to Equus, that has to be spent by October 31st this year. On the RESI money, we call it, that has to be spent by September 30 this year. The Prologis does not have a duration, that's private money. Okay, and then the performance has to be earned by September 30, which you put on the chart.
Which is all inclusive of
Yes.
the 21 million.
When we go to the youth contracts, those are also small amendments on this year, again, ending September 30, 2022.
I'm just curious.
It's all
again,
PwC
much
money.
more basic than that. I'm asking. the
Okay.
question. What, is this just additional dollars that are coming in from PwC, or is this a reallocation of
That's-
previous?
That's what I'm
dollars?
getting to. The current was a summation. We're going through and looking at all the money that hasn't been spent and then sharing it wherever it's needed. Some of it was new money from TWC that was delivered very late in the cycle. RESI is a good example. That money was very late in the cycle, so it is being awarded now. It's mostly staff costs to reach out to people who are unemployed. It's an engagement conversation. Please come back and go to work. That's what goes on in Reese. When we look at 2023, that's new money that arrived with us July 1st, but will be obligated on an October 1 to September 30 cycle. So that money is brand new funding. It'll have 2 years of life. And that's the money to keep the centers rolling and the youth contracts to restart or continue without interruption. Normally you'd see these in September, Ken, but we decided to move it up to October so that they know what's the expectation October 1.
The last part you were talking about, are you moving down to the proposed contracts? for
Yes.
23?
That-
Okay, I'm still waiting.
On page 15,
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
basically says there's
There's $30 million. We got $30 more million.
No.
No.
You only have what the action in front of
Addition.
it is 402,000 additional funding.
So why
Which is
is
the
the highlight 21 million and 8 million?
She
That's
just
a
gave you
total.
the new number. The new number now is 21.
The value of the contract they've been operating since October 1 last year has just been increased too.
To those numbers.
Yes, sir. Only by the 402.
And I'm sorry
Apology.
for the basic questions, but
But you're right, that even that 402,000 first and the 500, those monies are in the system now, been somewhat reallocated or new money that has to be spent by the end of October in a couple of cases, into September in a couple of cases.
So where do I see the 402 and the?
That's the total of the 160, the 150 and the
On page
92.5.
15, there's 160, 150 and 92.5.
At
That's
the
her
top.
recommendation is that we increase.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Thank you.
And the same thing with the
Like
500.
500 on there. Okay, thank you.
And then Lori addressed the 101 that will actually commence in October of 22 and actually expire based on what you said in September of 2024.
Except for
15.
childcare's an extra month and TANF's an extra month.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah, and then 15 for Equus.
correct.
Which one lasts for 2 years?
The Workforce Investment Opportunity Act is a 2-year grant every cycle. They don't have 2 years to spend it though. It's 2 years at the board level. We award it annually and then we recover costs that are unspent and reward again.
Page
So
16.
it's a constant rotation. I always have 2 Workforce Investment Opportunity grants for you to read every financial statement. One of they expire every 2 years, but we keep a handle on that and push it out every year. We just did closeout, everything is spent. We don't turn back, we owe money. Oh, youth. Youth last year and youth this year, very short. Not very short amount of money, but adult dislocated all being spent. It's a tough, sorry, guys, when the auditors told y'all how significant this stuff is, the compliance angle.
I guess I was wondering, so do we get what we put out, what we recovered, and then what we put out again?
We get a 2-year, and with the TANF, the welfare money, it's a 13-month cycle. The child care is also a 13-month cycle.
What I'm saying is, did we get that in our report?
Oh, yes,
It's us.
yes.
Okay, so,
Oh, yes. You'll see it in Ashley's report as obligations and expenditures. And every month those move and they move between the 2 years. So you can see how that's going.
I just think it'd be helpful, again, that we show percentage increase or increase over the prior period on page 17.
And it's a prior board that wanted to know the value of the contract. Apologies
Yeah.
there.
No worries. Are there any more questions?
we will do that.
If there are no more questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve. Miguel, are you impersonating Ken now?
Well, my question, his question.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Please understand on page 16. On child care group, just a basic question. To Carter's point, what is the amount that we were paying them prior to now, the 101 million?
So the initial contract for FY 22 was 84,700,000. It was 5.7 for operations and then 79 million for direction. That's the comparison that we're.
Committed to memory.
That's a good point, though, having those numbers to kind of reflect the percent increase is good.
This, go
ahead.
I would say all of that is the increase of funding coming from the Workforce Commission, and we had to increase their ops costs so they have enough hands to do the new work they're being assigned, which is to go back and reassess every star provider that was in the system, and that's like 169. It's huge.
Yeah, got
So,
it. And then the second question, going on page 23, helpful for me from the ethics standpoint. We have a column here, so I understand where everything that I can see here is on the rationale for the increase in funding. We're throwing out the matrix relative to performance targets, and everything is percentage. So, you know, that's helpful for me, but I think those percentages are being driven by the column that says, correct me if I'm wrong, please, Y2D num and Y2D bin.
mhm.
Yeah, right. So can you, year to date, what are the two, what are those two numbers?
The numerator and denominator being served, but look to the column from and to, if you would, at the end of the page. That's the period of time they're looking at. In many cases, they're looking at 22. Everything is in the rearview mirror for us. So it doesn't reflect how well things are going now, but that is reflected on a chart that Richard provided. Dan had asked us to summarize how many people are coming to the centers.
Yeah.
And you have that chart now.
So it's literally Y2D numerator, Y2D denominator.
Yes, sir.
That those numbers are people.
And yes, sir,
Yeah.
and they're responding to the period of time in that far column, so it's not reflecting current, except in childcare and TANF. Those are the only two that are current. The rest are all looking behind us. Is that, Richard? Pretty close? Okay.
Thank you.
And Bill,
They don't make it easy.
Yeah, Ken.
just again, trying to get some clarification here. So I'm looking at the value of the overall contract for Equus in this fiscal year, and that's just under $30 million. When I look at it, if this is everything for 23, it looks like it's around 20 million. So is that just simply less funding expected?
Well, I'll explain. So the existing contract, we've had multiple amendments where we've added money throughout this year to get to the 21 million for the workforce center contract and 8 million for the youth. So what we're proposing for 2023 is the initial. We will probably get more funding throughout the year of 2023, and we'll keep coming back asking for amendments to add, because we'll be funding.
So for comparison purposes, what was the number at the beginning
At the
of
beginning.
last fiscal year?
For Equus workforce, and now let me look out. I got that number.
Because it looks like it's about 20 million.
So it is for the workforce center contract. Last year, the initial was 12,003,700 compared to the 15,000.
But I'm just aggregating it. I'm not getting the component parts.
What was the youth fee?
The youth, it was 3 million just for youth funding, which is the same. When you look on page 17, the youth funding was 3.5 million. That was the initial,
And that's where we're starting again.
and that's where we're starting again.
And to Miguel's point, we're also looking at numbers since COVID's gone, we are looking at setting some specific goals for how many customers we need to outreach and recruit. And that's true for the college as well. They have not had a great, robust turnout in 2 years, and we've got to get more people in the program.
And we are increasing, Ken, for Dallas College, significantly increasing their budget from 265,000 to $1 million, because we want more people to be trained in those work. And that's it.
And that program works in tandem with the AEL program. Am I correct? The larger amount, the 4 million grant that they have. So we try to get kids both their AEL, ESL, and a skill. I said kids, younger.
So I was just asking in the future, can we get the comparison of the prior year and then the new proposed? And that way, we might ask us our question.
No problem.
So I just have an elementary question. So, 'cause I'm still learning. So you have the Texas Workforce Commission to give an additional money throughout the year. Okay. And when the additional money comes in, has the discretion to allocate it for childcare, the community college, and campus. And then the staff determines kind of how, that's what I'm shaking your head. That's
Yeah.
right.
We have been working with the contractors based on a procurement that was conducted and approved by the board that will last up to 4 years as long as people perform well.
Gotcha.
Childcare group can only receive childcare money. Eccles can only receive workforce center money and youth. They're approved for 2 functions and childcare group for 1. The money does not come in, it comes in those exact buckets. There's a youth bucket, there's a center bucket that's adult and dislocated, and there's a childcare bucket with 3 or 4 variables in it. So that's what I'm saying. It's very restricted. We're simply pulling it into the contract for the succeeding year. Now, when will they come up for procurement?
Well, I have the procurement cycles in each one is a little bit different.
Of course.
So there's no really conversation
mix
about
and
how
match.
much, I mean,
No.
it's going to them regardless of, you just kind of figure out how much you got to be able to.
Unless they have been poorly performing.
Gotcha.
If they have missed 7 measures, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Gotcha.
But that's one of the big
I
issues.
think what would be really helpful to Michelle's point, and that would have a lot of clarity here, is just like writing an amount that's non-discretionary. So that everybody understands, like, this is,
Yeah.
it has to go to this via federal, state, whatever. X of this is non-discretionary.
I can do that. Thank you. That's a good way to put it.
That's what I was trying to, thanks for that.
I understand. Sometimes we-
Are there any other questions? Then with that being said, do I have a motion to approve the recommendations? I'm sorry, who is- Susan, do I have a second? Second, Stephanie. All in favor of the approval of the recommendations as written, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Belinda, Rebecca. All right.
May I ask,
Recommendations approved.
motion and second was,
Susan and Stephanie, second.
thank you all.
Dee, great job. Thank you very much. And there's a few recommendations moving forward for next meeting. So thank you very much. Connie.
Put it on fast gear. We are already at 9:06.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will try to make it fast. Looking at page 18, the policy and plan amendments. Today, we're discussing contracted slots. As been raised to the board several times about contracted slots, this allows an opportunity to create a new service design. And we're looking at 3 and 4-star providers with a priority target of infant and toddlers. The plan amendment is a requirement by the state, and that's expanding quality for priority of infant and toddlers in the use of the contracted slots agreement. So that's the plan. The policy is basically following the WD letters and federal rules. So there's really no local flexibility on the policy itself. So that's the plan and the policy. If you guys have any questions on that, I am trying to go through this pretty fast.
Well, it's the proposal, it's the pilot that we
Yes,
signed
the
up
pilot.
for, that only Dallas and Alamo, San Antonio have signed up for, and we have to adopt those policies only specific to those contracts, which we're about to talk about. Correct. We just ran a
There's a
procurement for that. Yep.
turnout.
We get an action plan.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the recommendation on the plan as written?
I'll make a motion to.
Thank you, Ellen. A second?
Second.
And second, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions?
Rebecca,
Rebecca,
thank you.
and I know I'm saying say aye while I'm raising my hands. Apologize, but you all are doing it too?
We've got a tedious piece. I promise this is the last major action, and it's very tedious.
It was in the handout too, wasn't it?
It was only sent last night, and you have it in the handout, and I will take, I would take the hit on this one. I've never seen a cycle that required more attention than what we saw in this. when we get to the copiers at the end, I'll pick that up. We have no takers on upskilling. Connie's gonna quickly talk, or is it the, Connie's gonna talk about contracted slots who came in that applies to the policy and the pilot.
Yes.
And then we're gonna talk about quality, and there's two categories in quality. One will be some contracts, just 2 contracts. The others are recommended for a vendor list, meaning they'll be on a list with pricing and we can access them on an as-needed basis. Okay, laying that out,
Thank you.
Ms. Rash.
All right. Okay, so we released our procurement July 12th, and the deadline was August 11th. We were targeting 3 and 4-star childcare providers. And we were looking at this pilot program for childcare subsidy, not part of childcare subsidy, but a pilot program. And we received 4 responsive bids. These proposals were competitively reviewed and scored based on the criteria identified in the RFP. So the following providers that are listed, those 4, are recommended for negotiations, and the amounts requested are listed there as well as the number of slots. So on that one, it's board authorization to negotiate contracts in the order presented above until all funds are fully obligated. Each provider's information will be verified according to TRS and the Childcare Regulatory Systems at time of contract. And then another condition is pre-contract provider survey will be conducted as required by CPC.
And just an understanding, there may not be enough money to get through number 4, but we will do our best. Okay,
I do have a question, so the amounts requested vary greatly, as do the number of slots. They don't seem to correspond to, so like I think not 60,000 requested for 48 slots, 112 requested for 5. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Susan, everybody had a different approach to how they get a new infant room or a toddler room, how they hire teachers. So no 2, as I understand, Dee, were identical in their approach. They all have that's why negotiation is required.
But not really, it's not much of per this many slots. Right, yeah, so it is based upon the actual rate. Which they did include, you can tell on the 60,000, that's pretty much what they would need to kind of make their rooms up to date to do it. So that's why I needed to negotiate with them, because we did get it in different ways from each of them, so the amount varied greatly. So yeah, 48 slots. Yeah. We get the detail or the criteria that
It is an approved process. We can share it. I'll send it out in a Friday update on what our process is in procurement, so you'll all have that. It is different for every procurement. But these are approved policies. That's the only thing I'm gonna go with. The policies that we do, there are 3 to 5 readers per cycle, per issue
And the criteria is outlined in the actual RFP.
each time with the scores.
Go ahead, we'll vote on.
Everything.
Yes.
I got
Yeah.
a quick question.
Alan?
So just to make sure I understand this, with the quality dollars, there's a lump sum that's given to childcare group if we approve, and then there's a list of other approved vendors. Is that for childcare group to sub-grant out, or is that for the board to directly grant out to those other vendors?
It could be either, Alan, and it could also be recommended by the mentors that this training is needed for this school. So, Dee, is there a better answer that we toss this one around heavily as to who will suggest? Then the schools can ask for training, and professional development is in this too, Alan. There were several that had good professional development, but it's hard to say how much of those we'll use. So we put a cap of 150,000. This is the next item we haven't discussed, 150,000 per vendor, just to control it. And we can always come back to you guys with one that really is excellent. Some of these are not tried, some of them we have tried before. Keep going.
Sure.
Sorry.
So I appreciate that, and frankly, I'd be supportive of even giving you more flexibility and not even having the cap. But I guess my question is, since it's going in a lot of directions, just from a ongoing evaluating what's actually working to drive quality and what might we've tried but isn't getting the results we want, who actually tracks which intervention gets connected with what dollar value to which childcare provider? So for example, if we provide curricular materials to a set of 10 childcare providers, how do we know which 10 childcare providers got those curricular materials and whether or not they, the childcare providers actually benefited from them?
Previously, that data is not out there. I would say childcare group, any statement otherwise. We don't aggregate it or have not to this point, but it's not necessarily something we couldn't do in the future. But yes, your question came previously, you asked this about how are we looking at that investment? And it was more holistic, Dee, it's that we throw the money out, there's a lot of turnover, there's a lot of in and out. Going forward, I think it's very reasonable to do what you're asking, Alan, but it had not been done.
So that makes sense. So I just think it's essential that in negotiating the contract, that it's made clear to our vendors that it's important just to measure that type of activity so that we know, for example, if all of the quality supports are going to Northeast Dallas, not that that would ever happen, but we would want to look at that as a board and say, wow, I'm not sure that the dollars are equitably being distributed across the area. Or if we try something innovative in terms of quality supports, we want to be able to look back and say, did that work or did that not work, to inform future spends and future RFPs. So I really think it's essential that we track that information and report on that information on an ongoing basis.
Agreed, and do understand the childcare group has to be negotiated. That sum may be in excess of what finance and contract, but we will come back to you with details about what's in that after it's negotiated.
Okay, last point, and then I'll shut up, which is at the very beginning of this meeting, we kind of talked about how much I think we said we were only using like 3% of a potential or $3 million out of a potential $5 million in overhead. And I understand that tracking and data and this type of organization is a burden on staff. I just say we have all this additional overhead that we're not spending. And I don't know how we do the work of the board without having this kind of reporting and this kind of data to put at the center of the conversation. So I'll just say that I hope that as we think about that overhead and what we're not spending, we're thinking about the support systems necessary to be able to evaluate and do this kind of ongoing oversight.
We have heard you. In fact, we posted the jobs in the spring for childcare specifically, 2 positions. We have a 3rd position posted. We cannot find talent in this arena that is affordable. It's pretty bad. We have got the same problem with industry sector support, which we owe the chamber, someone in healthcare. We are working at it. Please don't think that we have overlooked that. So it's out there. It will be in the budget approved for next. Y'all have seen all of this come about this year. We're trying desperately to find talent. Anybody have talent in that arena, please let us know. Susie.
One more question. I just still need some clarity on Susan's question. So I wanted to make sure I understood the number of slots have to do with how many children that will be received, right? But the money has to do with getting the facility ready to receive those children and or how much it costs per child for the year or.
It's just the ancillary costs. Some of them are not doing, we can't build anything at all.
Okay.
But some of it is money to facilitate taking on another classroom of kindergarten, of infant.
So like teachers or.
The teacher and the teacher's preparation and such, they all approached it very differently. The cost of the child in care, however, will be paid from our normal CCD funding.
It will be paid from the contracted slot.
The 450,000. Oh, that does
The
complicate it.
additional,
Yes.
we need to, assist them with making the room ready. We could use some of the quality dollars to do that. But the contracted slot funding, the 450 is strictly for the reimbursement of the care.
The other will come out of quality money.
The other will-
Thank you for that clarification.
And I guess that's the
So they each approach this differently. So
Yes, ma'am.
Riding Rainbow said, I can care for 48 infants for $60,000. And wives and Brian House said, I can care for 5 infants for $112,000. So it's based on what theirs. Right, that's what I was.
And it is very different because the 5, they included their cost of direct care with a small portion of what they wanted to help assess their room.
So not all.
So it's not all came in the same, they didn't respond.
It's not apples to apples,
That's why we have to negotiate.
but it would be, like you had talked about with West earlier, it would be good to kind of align that a little bit to help us maybe better understand
That's
how
what we
that's
need to
looked
do.
at. We need to move on. I think we're gonna lose the quorum if we don't, so Connie, go ahead.
Okay.
We've sort of touched on childcare quality
We did,
in the
we
vendor
did.
list. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Can you just explain the rationale? I think I understand it, but the rationale on shall not exceed $150,000 per day.
We were just trying to keep it in perspective and not think that one of these could rise to over 250,000, which is not a vendor relationship. That should be a contract relationship. So most of these are priced very nominally. The highest one was 71,000. If we chose 2 rounds of that, it wouldn't exceed the 150. So we picked the 150 to cover what we thought could be accomplished in a year.
The second question is, are they, the childcare providers would be opting into executing?
They would be the student in the room. It could be the center owner, it could be the manager, it could be the frontline teachers. All of these have a different approach, again, for what's out there, what needs to be done to help the centers maintain their 4-star or achieve their 4-star.
And then how will they be able to sort of go through and understand what is the best fit for them?
The mentors that are funded through another grant in childcare, through childcare group, the mentors visit the centers, help the centers to consistently achieve their status. They can make recommendations. There will be probably some solicitation done by these vendors to offer training, but we will have to have it approved at the board level or childcare group and scheduled for the vendors. But they are wonderful about these trainings. You'd be surprised how many come to a Saturday event, an evening event. They want to do a lot better in their field and they want to make more money, which is the STAR system.
My last question, because I have to go. Number one.
You gotta vote first.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna say that. Okay. Page and Ross Learning Center, they're over the 150 maximum. Oh, here's.
No, that's only applying to the vendors.
These are quality. Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong, yeah, so we're talking about quality and training. Okay, thank you.
Copiers just really a ridiculous mess.
Thank
Xerox was the best value. Of course, they flawed bid. We talked to them. I ended up with the vice president yesterday and they upped their price beyond reason, in my estimation. The price jumped $200,000. They had misadded service costs and several other things. We're recommending to negotiate with Toshiba. We need this done, 3 years, $319,341. We're just not too sure. It's an untried product. And I was gonna ask if anybody here has used Toshiba products. Now, we're using on Moss. I mean, this is 26 units. 37 units. So it's close to 36. Okay. 37 units. This is throughout our system and our workforce centers. It was a very tedious procurement when you get flawed procurement. So I don't think Toshiba will have the same problem. We do try to buy American. We did look into all the companies that did looking, because that is one of the conditions of the state. It is very hard to find copiers that are made in America other than Xerox. So
I would
This is
just
where we are.
caution you on procurement, that anything you buy, and you're expecting it to be delivered, that you see that it's in stock, that it's in the United States, it's in a warehouse in Dallas. Otherwise, as you end your one contract, you could end up
Yes.
with no product.
And the current contract doesn't expire until late October. We feel we're early on, plus this is a lease. They did give us purchase price, and yet we don't want machines that are already outdated, the 3rd month they're in our centers. So we have always leased these copiers. We have a service contract inside this money for 36 months of service. And hopefully this
Are
is
they
all of it.
FMV leases or dollar?
F&B dollar.
Fair market value.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
If there are no more questions, I'd ask for a motion to approve all the recommendations listed to negotiate, to give staff the opportunity to negotiate. Second. Who moved on that? Was that Susan? Susan and Ken. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. Any abstentions?
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Thank
you guys very
Before
much.
y'all move, staff, is that all the action that we need today? Are we sure? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I just like to say, well, just thought that this section was a very healthy conversation, and I think we all learn in the middle of the process. And so thank you for creating space for that, and thank you staff for educating us.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. I hope the staff does too, because there has been some
Oh, yeah.
good information out there that I know we had, I know in the past, we've been involved in it for a while. A lot of times we don't ask questions and we're just making some assumptions, and it's good you got to clarify. So thank you so much. All right, Richard, you're on board.
Good morning, I'm Richard Perez, I'm the research manager for the board. Now, I'm just going to touch on some of these to sort of hopefully catch up some time. I am going to start on page 19, on economic snapshot. And like Lori was saying, we graphed the activity in the workforce centers for 12 months. We have the reasons that the customers visit the centers, as well as the tally for each workforce. And just to touch on some things, economically, the unemployment rate is just up a little bit for Dallas.
Richard, can we,
Yes.
before we, I think this is extremely valuable information. Again, going back to the core of why we're here, what are our workforce centers
Yes.
doing? Paying a lot of money to Equus to do this. So as I look through this, I see at the very bottom, veteran services, 178. The way I read that, 178 veterans came to our workforce centers for all of Dallas County.
Yeah.
Or is it that 178 requested veteran services in our workforce centers?
And we do serve more veterans than that. I think what it is, when somebody came in and specifically asked, I'm a veteran and I like to receive veteran employment services. So if they didn't ask, if they were just looking for a job, or maybe were part of Receive or some other program, then they might go under the radar. So, but we do have veteran representatives in each one of our workforce
Who
centers.
do not work for Equus.
Yes.
Texas Veterans Commission sits in our centers. Does this reflect their numbers as well, Richard?
I think it could. So this information comes from something called a Work in Texas greeter. So when somebody walks into the center, there's a kiosk and they choose their reason. And then they,
But they could avoid the kiosk. if
If
they wanted to.
they could avoid, veterans reps may say, oh, just have a seat and I'll find you when you get there and we'll offer.
Have to self-identify basically.
Yes.
But nonetheless, everybody goes through the same process. So if that's a failure for 178 veterans in all of Dallas County.
No, Carter, I'm sorry. No, it's not a failure. We don't outreach veterans. The Texas Veterans Commission does. And I'll give you a good example. You've been to Red, White, and U. Have you seen the disproportionate number of non-vets that come to our Veterans Job Fair? We're not sure what is happening with vets. I know that older vets are still having trouble
That's
getting
my
back in the
point.
market. Yes,
That's my
sir.
point exactly.
But a lot of them are served as dislocated workers, or they're doing their own thing. Younger vets, and women in particular, get a job right away, don't need our services. Younger vets are being treated at VA for emotional drug issue. I don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, we need to outreach veterans more. We do outreach them once a year, and it's such a big way, and we still get such a small turnout. And I don't know why. I mean, North Central did it last year. They went on Spectrum with a big campaign to get veterans, and they didn't get the numbers. So we're something's not right, but I don't know what it is. So failure, it's still, we're not hitting the right button with the vets. or there aren't that many vets left to put to work. Well, we don't have the.
You have a
churn we used
constant
to have.
flow, so of people must be
Right.
out. But my point is, the Veterans Administration does a very poor job of providing services to those post-service. We know that. And I think that's a great opportunity for us to provide services for veterans to get them employed, however we do that. So I think, again, this is the first look at these numbers. Maybe I was a little harsh in saying it's a failure. It shouldn't be the lowest rank, I guess, is what my point. And two, I would like to know what Equus is doing to increase activity in these centers. What are they doing to increase their influence? What are we doing to get more customers in the door? And that, I'll close with
You
that.
see the virtual is the top.
Yeah,
Okay, we paid for a virtual call center starting under, okay. The state reported to us 2 weeks ago, they are seeing the same trend statewide. More people are attached to the virtual environment than ever, and the foot traffic is minimal. However, at the same time, we're trying to incorporate the Texas, the Rehabilitation Commission, bringing the rehab people to work in our centers. So it appears we're still building bigger centers at a time when we're not getting the foot traffic. So, and that was kind of Dan's point at the audit meeting. But it's counterintuitive at this point. I think we still believe people have to have a place to house. The staff has to have a place to house. So I am conflicted. And we're not sure how to re-engage. I will tell you, the college has hired an engagement person, and I think this is going to be very relevant on the youth program. And he's put it on Facebook, so I'll just say it. Councilman Casey Thomas will now be working with the college to outreach kids, young adults, because we're missing the boat. The messenger matters. Now, maybe that's what we need. TDC is not getting it done, the Veterans Commission. Maybe we need some veteran on our staff who's actually doing that. We don't get paid to do that. It would have to be in keeping with the rest of the money. All we get paid from TDC is housing costs. But that would be a way to go at it, I think, is have our own veteran doing trips to the VA and things like that. So I'm not saying we couldn't do better. I just think we've tried so hard in so many ways.
I think some of the other areas too, other organizations, there's the challenge of people self-identifying.
Oh,
So we've
gosh,
been
yes.
trying to figure
Yes.
out how to get people comfortable with doing that. To even, because you probably are serving a lot more. It's just
Yes.
that they're not letting us know who they are.
Same is true of a disability.
Yes.
People don't
especially.
want, unless they're already engaged in services and they see a benefit.
They
and-
won't self-identify.
And the third, and I will tell you, we discourage self-identifying on that, is we were asked to work with a second chance job fair. And I discourage that. Yes, second chance friendly, but don't brand an event a second chance, because then everybody who shows up feels they're being judged to have had a criminal record. So it's very difficult right now to be as inclusive and not scare people off. But I'll take that on the vets, that we need to do something specific. And of course, we're coming up to NYU. It's on your calendar. Please come. It's an amazing event. But the bulk of the people who show up are not veterans, because it is open to the public.
And they get first dibs. So to speak.
Yes.
The veterans that go in, they get to go in first and work it first. We just need to get more in attendance.
And young vets, as Ms. Carter and I mentioned, the vets who came out in the early 90s, still looking for that permanent situation.
thank you.
You
Go
too.
ahead, Richard.
So, we'll continue bringing the activity for centers. We could even compare to the state if it was a percentage, just to make sure everything was sort of in line. But seasonal unemployment is up just a little bit for June. It's typical, and it matches the state pattern. And
And I think Lynn left before this slide. I put this in specifically for the city of Dallas.
yes, and the next page, we wanted to do something different and highlight a city in Dallas County with some information you might not see every day. For example, for Dallas, we chose where the workers are in Dallas versus where they live. So the first one that's a little more blue, that is where the workers live in Dallas County. The next slide right next to it You could tell, a little darker towards northern Dallas. That's where the jobs are in Dallas. And just wanted to, just sort of show that, median earnings went back 5 years. It is ticking up, median earnings as well as the poverty rate is ticking down, which is a good thing. So next time we can highlight a different city, with some similar or different kinds of information.
Our next largest being Garland, and
Yes.
they're quite a study, so we'll come back with some Garland info.
What's the poverty earning threshold?
Well, the problem is that poverty is being defined as it was before the increase in wage at $15. So I think poverty is truly, anybody under 50,000, I think, as a family. But in the Thrive Project, we tried to make 50,000 sort of the living wage job. Not considering this family size, simply the living wage job should pay 50, and you can see we're edging up, but with inflation, we've lost buying power against those dollars. I really wish the electeds in Washington would raise that poverty definition for us so we could be dealing straight up, but they're not going to do that in an election year.
And on page 21, I'll talk about some of the child care dashboards. The first one is child care performance. It is ticking up a little bit. That is the blue graph or the line. The orange graph is our state target. And that's sort of going towards the end of year target. That's sort of floating over September. And eventually in September, that orange line will hit that. But I think we're in a good place that we will meet or exceed performance for childcare. And then we also grant the DPS children per day. The next dashboard is for quality. And I just wanted to touch on a few things. The number of TRS providers is down slightly. We do have reasons for that. Some had some deficiencies, so they lost their TRS status and moved. Some were sold, and it takes a little bit of time for the new provider to be TRS certified. But I did want to point out one thing. If you notice on the graph of the number of children enrolled in TRS providers by month, that's higher than it's ever been, the 7,491. Well, for this year. So I thought that was positive. And I will jump on to performance.
Let me add, we will have a third slide on child care based on Alan's request. We'll have that in the next packet.
Yeah.
We didn't have time on this one. Ken, thank you so much.
And I did want to say the wait list, the current wait list is 4,900. I pulled that yesterday. Just real quick on the NPR, which again is the monthly performance report. Notice there is a lot less red. So we are only missing one measure. They added a fourth quarter of performance for the WIOA measures, and we met most of them. The one that is not meeting is, it looks at the entered employment rate for the fourth quarter after they exit our program. And Lori had said earlier, some of these measures within the rear view mirror, and this one certainly does that. It's looking at the year of 2020, from January to December. And, that wasn't a great year to find employment. So we took a hit on that. Atlas is doing what they can to see if they can repair that. But we'll keep you posted.
But we are appealing this to the state because of the data that you found. And we've
Yes.
trained an inordinate number of truck drivers,
That's correct.
preparing for what was needed in the economy. And then those jobs didn't materialize in the early part of 2020. So it was how many, 200 and?
It was approximately 243. And we're sort of working through some of those details with the state, but we should have.
They're not real receptive right now, but we're not through with them.
Yeah.
If I could tell people to look just a little further, Richard, on 26, I believe, 26, Richard was mentioning, we're looking pretty good. Under Dallas, look at that. not many boards are meeting the full choices rate and the childcare. At this point, we're meeting both. That's huge. That puts us in like the top 8 boards in the state.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, congrats to Equus and to Child Care Group. Those were major lifts. Equus put everything they had into choices this year. Making that measure is a giant accomplishment. Also, only missing one measure puts us in the top 11 in the state. So it was not easy.
Yeah.
And contractors did an amazing
Yeah. Great job.
So the other large boards are Alamo and Lower Rio. And us. So we are the top 3 large boards in the company. And I will go just a little bit further on childcare. Dallas and Gulf Coast serve a huge number of children for the childcare program. And number 3 is Alamo. And there, the number of children they have in care is 9,640. So that's the closest.
And we're at 14.
Correct.
Not much comparison, but then Houston doubles our number.
Yes, they are at 28,000. They're almost at 29,000.
Note to make though, if Gulf Coast, the larger region, ever fails the state would fail. They have really got to do a lot of work with Gulf Coast, and they recently lost their 35-year record. So they have a brand new director there. It's a tough haul for them. Right now, just getting back into gear, but they were missing like 10 measures when this started. So they've come a long way as well.
Yeah.
And yes, we do meet, we do talk to one another. Bill and I were just in a meeting with all the board EBs for sure, and a handful of chairs back, first part of August. In Arlington, fun times.
I know I touched on things quickly, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has.
Really appreciate the dashboard, childcare. That's a lot of work. Appreciate you doing.
No problem.
And we're probably, just as Laura alluded to, we're probably gonna tweak that dashboard a little bit.
There'll be a third one.
Yeah,
More-
they're always evolving. Very
Yeah.
helpful. So,
Thank you.
so they'll change a little bit every.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Go Ashley. Go out there, babe.
Like we see.
Medic. All right, that's good.
Hello, Ashley Berger, Chief Financial Officer, and my report, beginning on page 27 of your board packet, is providing the detailed expenditure by grant as of June 30th, 2022. The highlighted grants correlate to those for which you approved adding additional money to Equus's current year contract after Demetria's presentation earlier this morning. I'm here for any financial related questions that you may have. I know we've already been through extensively with our external auditors regarding fiscal year 2021. But if you've thought of any questions in the meantime or have questions about current expenditures, I'm happy to try and answer them for you.
Ash, I think what I hear from the board is those last 2 pages, 29 and 30, everything after private. We probably need to pull and do a special report next month on what is discretionary and what is tied to outcomes and which outcomes. As I mentioned, a war chest, so I think that data might go out in a Friday update, not in the published board packet for the board's consumption, if that's okay with y'all. Is that good? So that we don't go too far with that. Okay, but I think those two things, the end of 30 and the whole thing in 31, just lump those together, not lump them, but let's kind of talk through what's going back and when, what we'll spend out, and what's truly ours to keep.
All right.
Ashley, great job on the audit officer.
Thank you my team.
Who's here from finance?
Roy here and Yvonne is our new account manager. We have Rowena and Zane and Scoot on the phone.
Yvonne is our new senior accountant.
Yes, she's our.
Yes.
All right, I will turn
You're
it over to Rebecca Manette.
Close us out, Becky.
I'm sorry.
Close us out.
Okay.
Bring it
I'm
home.
Becky Manette, the quality manager, EO officer, and complaint monitor for the board. And I'm going to take you through page 32 of the packet quickly. Page 32. Okay. Child Care Group monitoring. This is the fiscal and program monitoring sheet. And Childcare group review was complete pending the monitor response. The fiscal review for Equus is complete and pending the monitor response. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Dislocated Worker Program is pending the report from the monitor, and the youth program under WILA is pending the response from the contractor. Between the fiscal and program monitoring, the AEL reviews have been completed for Richardson ISD, Irving ISD, Wilkinson Center, and Dallas College. And they are either pending a report from the monitors or pending a response from the contractor. And last but definitely not least, CWC has removed the board from the Choices Technical Assistance Plan. The board has met the Choices full engagement rate of 50%, and that letter is attached in the packet. If there's no questions,
Thank you, Becky. We have two independent monitors, high quality, been with us a long time, who monitor consistently on these contractors. The contractors have to be monitored for program compliance as well as financial. So that is ongoing. If there is ever a disallowed cost, you will see it reported in the final on that sheet. So oversight is one of the most important parts of the board's responsibility, and I hate that it comes at the very end. If y'all would like to move it up, we can do that. And even have the monitors visit us either virtually or in person, so you get to know Christine and Juanita and their companies.
I can't believe Rebecca got away without any questions. I think staff is probably gonna have a private meeting on that. What? Are there any questions, from my existing audience or board?
Anybody who's left.
Or anybody who's left? If not, meeting is adjourned.
Can I get you?